Hello and welcome to another episode of Resourceful. My name is Tom Manners. On Twitter, I'm at Manomatics. My website, tommanners.co.uk, where all my Resourceful episodes are on. But this is the most crucial one I've ever done. This feels like the most emergency. We need to record this now because in the last 5 days, we are all learning how to do remote teaching. And much like other people, I've gone onto Twitter and I've tried to find people who can help me do this. My school are using Microsoft Teams. And so in this session, we're going to look at remote teaching in general, but we're going to use some examples from Microsoft Teaching and some other websites as well. So what I did, I went onto Twitter, I looked for the people who I thought might be able to help me. And I know one of my guests already, but in the last couple of days, I've now met my other guest, and we've met twice now, and it's been great just having the opportunity to share with other practitioners and to learn from other practitioners. And in this current environment, we need to all accept we are learning from each other. We are very much learning from each other. If we recorded this in a month's time, it would probably look very different. In fact, you know what? I'll bring in my two guests now. We've got Elaine and Naomi, who should be appearing on screen there now. And you know what? I'll ask them. Firstly, come on down. Thank you for joining. But should we do this in a month's time? Because I bet you it'll look different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what I've found is that almost every day I'm picking up something new.
Yeah, it's just, it's Thursday as of recording day, and we found this out on Monday night, and we're all trying to learning differently and just new little tips every day. And so hopefully this will be useful to people. So Elaine and Naomi, if you could, Naomi, as you're on top of my screen, if you could introduce yourself, tell us about you, and then Elaine will come to you. And hopefully people will find this useful with lots of hints and tips. But Naomi, tell us about yourself first.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Naomi Bartholomew Miller, and I am first and foremost a maths teacher, head of maths in a school in the northeast of England. But then I also have various other hats as well. And I originally met Tom through our work with the NCTM as secondary mastery leads for the NCTM. And then I also work for Pixel. I'm the Pixel maths lead. And I work for Pearson as a credible specialist and also the senior projects lead for the research school up here in the northeast. So lots of different opportunities and exciting things that I get to be involved in.
See, I'm very pleased that you introduced yourself because I wouldn't have remembered all of that. And Elaine, the same goes for you, because even on your Twitter page, and we can see your Twitter handles on screen now, you've got lots of hats as well. So Elaine, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Elaine. I'm PE and maths teacher, so I've been on a bit of a journey. When I moved over to London in 2012, I've been a supply teacher. In my current school, I was second in the department for maths, and this year I've moved over to being acting head of PE. So a little bit different. And in a pandemic, being acting head of PE is an interesting one. One of my main interests is all about EdTech, and hence why I'm chatting with Tom tonight. One of the things that I've been looking at is using Microsoft Teams. How do we use it? And especially we were lucky in the fact that I'd introduced it in my school back in February of 2019, and we were lucky that we were a couple of steps ahead, but it's getting harder and harder to keep steps ahead. People are catching up.
Well, you just mentioned your interest in EdTech, so I'm going to share my screen straight away because you've created this website. You actually created this back in December, did you?
Over Christmas holidays.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been writing loads of different Microsoft Teams notes, sticking them on TES, and it's something that I felt, you know what, I can kind of, it's one of my passions that I really like making sure that other people can do the best they can. This is something that's very, very different for people. And the way I've kind of put it is that it's nearly like going back and starting your PGC again. Teaching online is very different. It's, there's loads of technical bits that you have to remember besides just the normal pedagogy. So one of the things I said, I think it was just before Christmas, decided, you know what, we'll go and design a website, upload all my Teams resources. There's loads of more content that I'm currently writing. There's 2 blogs there as well that I've kind of discussed different approaches to teaching and learning. But it's keep watching this space. There's more and more to come.
What I would say about Elaine's website, sorry, Tom, is just that it's been absolutely superb for us at school with the accessibility of the writing. It's screen grabs and it's really clear. It's really easy to follow, and it's clearly written by somebody who knows what it's like to be suddenly having to learn how to do all of this type of stuff. So thank you, Elaine, from me, because it has massively helped me as well in figuring out how to use Teams.
Well, do you know what? To reiterate the thank yous, because this whole series of Resourceful is usually with the creator of the website. You talk through what their website is and the tasks they use and the design. So this session won't be a how-to, because Elaine's got that on her website. It's not going to be a how-to use Microsoft Teams, but we're going to debate what we struggle with in our first week, what we've learned from our first week maybe, but also the tools that are within Microsoft Teams and some other programs as well over the course of this time. So thank you both. Well, as I said, I couldn't have possibly listed all your credentials at the start, so thank you for doing that for me. By the way, for those who are, we discussed this just before we started recording. There is, of course, a prize for guessing the background that Elaine is currently sporting behind her. I'm told it's from a TV program, which I didn't know. But we'll tell you at the end of the recording. Okay, so we're looking at Microsoft Teams now. If I can start straight away with what I think what's been my biggest concern is AFL, checking for understanding. Now, there's lots of little tips, which are things like, I've heard quality over quantity, for example. Really take your time, slow down more than you've ever slowed down. And I certainly learned that in my first lessons where I started yesterday. But it's that response. And my biggest thing that I feed off in my lessons is that response when I've asked a question and I want to know back. So what are your thoughts about that, you two? And then let's see how we've adapted to that so far.
I think it's very different in different schools. And it does depend on the school's IT policy as well. So if a school is, cameras on, microphones on, then you as the classroom teacher can see those little tells from students that, like, oh, kind of, that thinking face goes on. They're not quite sure. I think that becomes a bit more difficult when it's a cameras off, microphones off, where you're at the other extreme where you're just using the chat. I think it's then trying to develop ideas and getting students to respond is a huge thing. And I think between myself and Naomi, there's loads of different ways of doing it that we can go and get those responses. And sometimes it's like one of the ones I've heard is that people don't want to respond in the chat because your name is in the chat, and it's the same as students don't want to necessarily put their hands up in a lesson. That they'll actually prefer to write it down and you see it as a student, when you're marking as a teacher. I think Naomi's got a couple of tips with this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really difficult, isn't it? And I'm of the group of the cameras off and microphones off and sort of talking to a blank screen, and almost the chat becomes a distraction as well for a lot of them. That it's getting that balance between I want you to respond in the chat so that you respond to my question, but equally I don't want you getting distracted by it. I want your focus to be on what's in front of you, what's on that screen there. So quite often putting a quiz halfway through a lesson, a Microsoft Forms, putting in Microsoft Forms, a pre-populated one that can just be, it could even be a red, amber, green type of thing as well at that point, just tell me red, amber, green at this point in time, or it could actually be some questions about what they've already done, just breaking up the lesson a little bit. It also ensures that students are still visible, they're still part of the lesson, they're still participating, because again, using the Insights app, I can see whether or not then they've engaged throughout the lesson rather than just logging on at the start, knowing they're going to get the register mark and then disappearing at the end of the meeting.
Can I ask one thing? Sorry, Naomi. I'm just going to share screen as a reminder, because one of the first episodes of Resourceful I did was thankfully with Craig Barton, and ABCD questions are surely this is a perfect opportunity. And Naomi, before we start recording, was it you said you never lose the opportunity to learn from a crisis?
Yeah, I think it was Brian Lightman, who said to me, never waste a good crisis. Never. And, and what I think has been great has been actually, let's take some positives out of this as well. As hard as it has been, as challenging as it's been, it has forced us to embrace things that we never knew existed and actually perhaps explore websites and software and things that's out there that we perhaps have never used in our teaching, but actually I don't want to let go of again now. So there are certain things like, I know obviously diagnostic questions have been around for a long time, but actually how powerful they are now, that doesn't need to change even when the situation in school changes. Using those diagnostic questions in this way doesn't necessarily need to change, or how we use this technology, I think, will be something that we want to look at how we continue with it, even when things do go back to normal, whatever that may be.
I mean, I'm a big believer in ABCD question and whiteboards in the classroom, and either they show they're working on. At least you get the answer back if you do only ask for the ABCD off them. Now, one thing I think we're all going to be aware of, diagnostic questions would be a great snapshot there. You can log into it, but as we've kind of established, there are loads of websites we could be signing into, and then we've got more GDPR stuff. So I imagine quite a few schools are trying to stop getting us to sign up for, I mean, Dr. Frost Whiteboard, for example, but you have to log in. Diagnostic questions, great, these are brilliant websites, but you have to log in. So you've got those complications. So that's what you're saying about the polls would be really interesting. So I don't know if we can either demonstrate it or see it in some way. Again, the how-to is on your website, I believe, Elaine. But can either of you show that just so we can see a snapshot of it? Because I think for an ABCD, you've done your exposition, you've explained what you wanted to explain, 2 or 3 diagnostic questions, you've then got a bit of sense that they've got it. So are either of you able to share that or how it looks at all?
Okay, so just looking at a quiz like this, fairly straightforward quiz that you would launch during your lesson, it's great. The one thing I would say though is a couple of pieces of advice is that just be careful if you're going to put in the correct answer. So I did a question the other day with my year 9s asking them for the factors of 12, and they listed the factors of 12, but if they'd not listed them in the same way as I'd inputted the answer, so if they'd not put commas and I had put commas, or they put them in a different order, it didn't accept it as a right answer. So it's just worth knowing that you just need to be careful if you are going to decide on putting the correct answer in, but you don't obviously have to put a correct answer in, or you can do multiple choice. Obviously there's the argument there with multiple choice as to whether or not students then just click for the sake of clicking, but yeah, just looking at this form here, you can see how quickly that would be dead easy to set up. You can reuse forms over and over again and those quizzes, and just drop one of those in. You can send the link in the chat as well, so that students are not coming out. You just drop the link in the chat and then they can open it up and answer it partway through your lesson.
And I'm really conscious of making sure we don't make these suggestions that are horrendously workload heavy. And so the fact that you say it's that easy, it is that easy to make these for, that's really nice to hear, because everyone's just scared at the moment of the extra stress of it. So thank you for sharing that. One thing I was going to use, and I now feel it feels a bit pathetic, do you know with whiteboards where you ask all the pupils you might ask them to wait 5 seconds, all load them at the same time. And I must admit, without doing that, what I did was the chat, I was like, choose ABCD, go, and then I got all these answers. But as you suggested, Elaine, what I haven't thought about is the kids might be nervous. For some reason, they're happy in a classroom. Yeah, I don't know if you've had the same already in lessons. Anyone willing to answer on the microphone? Not a single pupil. I'm like, come on, you guys, I'm friendly, it's all good. But they're going through something different as well. So we've really got to have empathy for them at the moment, because they just won't speak up in the same way. I'm sure some will, but many won't. So thank you for sharing that, Naomi. It was nice to be able to see the forms. Is there anything else you think about that live feedback as such, or live checking for understanding?
I think just the other thing with the forms as well is that actually the workload can be distributed throughout the department. And I've seen some examples of, I think it was a science teacher online that was putting all the links. You can, when you go into the form, you create it, you're able to share it, but you're able to share it to duplicate it. So for example, I might decide I might be doing a quiz on probability. I create the quiz, and then I know that actually the other teachers in my department will use it as well. So that's shared to duplicate that you can send them the link and say, here you go. And then that teacher will get all the information for their class. They can use, they share the quiz link, the form link, but then they'll get their information for their class as well. So, kind of distribute that workload as well. I think it might be something that we actually look at doing long term, having these, because if we're going to be stuck at the front of the classroom where we can't really get around the classroom when we go back, if we go back, when we go back, then we need to have other ways of being able to check the understanding that are out of the classroom. So putting that work in now will actually pay off later on as well.
I wish I could quote the exact words again, Naomi. Was it learn from a crisis, or
never waste a good crisis?
Never waste. I mean, I'm a huge believer in collaboration, but what you just said, Elaine, why does it need a crisis to get us to think about sharing good practice with each other and sharing workload? It certainly shouldn't. So you're making a really, really good point. The biggest things that my colleagues have come to me about is AFL, and so I think that's one of our best ways. And again, we have that limitation of maybe not the individuals, but I think before we recorded, we said something that there is a way of then checking which individual said what. Now, is that quick, or can we not do that until later on?
Yeah, no, you can do that pretty much instantly. You can have a look and see. You can review the students' responses. It could be something that actually you want to go through and you want to review the responses and add them an extra note about something as well. You can add some feedback in there if you wanted to. It does have a huge amount of functionality, Microsoft Forms. Google Forms does as well. I know I was talking to a head of science the other day that said that they're using Google Forms and that they're not going to get rid of those. That is going to continue because they've been so impressed with the data that they get back out of it, that they've really embraced using Google Forms as informing their planning as well going forward.
Awesome.
I think the advice with any of these is that I know it's very much a teach like a champion. You've all these teach like a champion strategies, but every single one of them is based on this idea of practice. And I think that's the biggest thing. Anything that you take from sessions that are being done about remote teaching or any of the apps that we share, your best thing is to actually create your own little team and go and practice before you do it, so that you're comfortable. That actually this is the button I need to click, or I sometimes will have a little post-it note in terms of what's my routine this lesson going to look like, because we've changed that, taking registers. And sometimes I just jump in with my starter. I want to get started. I want to get teaching. I forget to take my register. So I actually have it written down on my laptop. But the same idea can apply for if we say, for example, using a form, write the steps down. Nobody's going to see the steps, but write them down so you're comfortable. But also like the whole concept of practice makes a huge difference.
Can we talk about adaptive teaching? Now, I think probably everyone has different strategies in the normal classroom. I can't stand use the word normal at the moment, but it's just all the time. But in the normal classroom, we don't have our own strategies, but it maybe feels particularly difficult at this stage. So what have you been using yourselves at this? And also, what do you feel technology can help us with?
I think the first thing to say is that I realised quite quickly I need to just simplify everything. I think you said it at the start, Tom, about slowing everything down a little bit. And, where you want your lessons normally in the classroom to be quite punchy and pacey, and you're going at not 100 miles an hour, but, you're trying to keep things moving. Actually, it's almost the complete reverse when it's online. It needs to be so much slower. But that sort of differentiation of keeping it, slowing it right down, but keeping it moving for those that are with you is really difficult as well. But I think simplifying what's on my screen, that's another thing that's, again, just a really simple, quick win, was to just get rid of all the noise on my PowerPoints and keep things as basic as I can, because I'm very aware of the fact that some of the students at home are using phones to access the lessons, not a computer screen, not a laptop, not an iPad, anything. It's literally just on a phone. And actually, if you think about a PowerPoint, what a PowerPoint would transfer to on a screen, on a computer, on a phone screen, actually you need to keep that quite simple. You need to keep it the text quite big, and just thinking more carefully about what I'm saying, so that everything that I'm saying they need to listen to and they need to hear, and there's not a lot of background noise going on. There's not a lot of extra speak going on that's not relevant to them. So I think that's been a big change, is really paring back, and also, I suppose, everything having to be prepared in advance. So, sometimes where you think, oh, they've not quite got that question, or actually, no, they've gone through that quicker than I wanted. We'll just move on to that exercise, or we'll move on to that next bit. But you haven't got it there. You haven't got that right there. And, you can't just suddenly produce something out of thin air for them. So that kind of thing has been a big change as well.
Elaine, any thoughts on how you kind of have adapted?
I think I've ended up a little bit chalk and talk, kind of similar to Naomi. It's paring it back. I use Microsoft Whiteboard and I share that. I'm quite lucky. I use my iPad and I use that as my screen to write on. But it is just the basics. I think Naomi mentioned it in terms of the pace. Pace does slow down, because it's not, the online teaching is not a direct substitution for being in the classroom. There's nothing better than actually being there. This will get there, but it won't be the same. And I think people have to realize that as well, and sometimes give themselves a break. because they're like, oh, John, the pace was that wasn't, wasn't quick enough. I wanted to get through this. But we've said it before during this, it's quality over quantity at the moment. It's that having that really good quality of instruction that students are really understanding, and then building in all the strategies for AFL.
Isn't it interesting, though, that everything we've just said, we could not be in the middle of a pandemic, it would all be true. Absolutely everything we just said, the noise on the PowerPoint, slow down, small steps, Rosenshine, checking for understanding. And I think when I work with my trainee teachers, one of the questions in a session I did today with them was talking about what would you do for children with special needs? I was like, well, what's good for children with special needs is good teaching for everybody. It's not different. The good steps for them are the good steps for everybody. In most cases, if not all. And so I'm thinking about things like worked examples. And I know, Naomi, that one of the websites you've been using, and we'll talk about those, is Matt Woodfine's. I'll talk about that a little bit later on, where it's got the I do and we do. And it's just that slowing down and going through it, waiting for the responses. And you do that in the classroom, which is absolutely true as well. You mentioned the mobile phones, and I just made a note to myself here. A point I heard in school today, that when we're sharing documents, if you share a Word document, it's not as easy to see on a PowerPoint, on a mobile phone. I think that goes with PowerPoint as well, because they might not have that software. So if you save it as a PDF, and when you talk over the PowerPoints, it's not an annotated PowerPoint, but if you save it as a video, then more pupils can access it because of their mobile phones.
Yeah,
you're both nodding, so I'm assuming that's right.
yeah. So it depends on the phones and the software they've got on the phones and everything as to whether or not PowerPoint. So we're having this sort of slight discussion about assignments. So I'm a big fan of using assignments on Microsoft Teams. It's something where, as long as you click the three dots and assign it to all students, they all get their own copy of the work that they then can edit, and it just automatically saves it onto their assignment profile, which I love. I think it's fantastic. However, the actual editing bit is causing some issues, which we're sort of getting around by they can add work of the photographs and so on. So I was sort of reading today some Year 11 work and kind of tilting my head trying to follow their photograph up to see how they'd answered questions and so on. But yeah, just being aware of the type of technology that students have got, or if they've even got that technology, I think is really worthwhile thinking about as well.
Now, Naomi, you mentioned Class Notebook. Now, I'm not aware of it. I haven't used it yet. I'm on Teams, and so I'm steps behind. So can you share that with us and how you can get those images back?
Yeah, so Class Notebook, if I just show you on the screen. So Class Notebook, how I would use this is I might have delivered my lesson via PowerPoint, but then what I can do is I can upload screen grabs or pictures or whatever of particular key learning points or examples that I've used. And I upload into the class, into the content library, into the page for this particular lesson. And then at the bottom of it, you can see here, I've added then what the work is that I perhaps want them to now do as independent work. So not homework, not work that I want to set as an assignment that's going to either automatically mark or anything like that, just so I can keep a track of what they're actually doing. I can put it there, and then I can distribute that page, and I can distribute it to all of the students' class notes. So when they access it, they go in and they see that file, they see that page, and then they've got their own individual page where they can now take a photograph of the paper that's in front of them where they've been making notes when we've done the PowerPoint. Or if they've got a writing pad, they can directly write onto the writing pad. They can upload a Word document if they want onto that. So there's lots and lots of different ways. And OneNote, it does exactly what it says on the tin. It is just one big piece of paper for that page. So it doesn't matter how much space they take up. And then I can click on this and review it, and I can review each student, just go through each page, and I can just keep an eye on it, really, because when we had students who were isolating for 2 weeks, particularly when we had bubbles that were isolating for 2 weeks, one of the things that was my big bugbear was when they came back, they were handing in scraps of paper, and they were giving me little bits of paper with, I think this is from your lesson, but because I share it with someone else, he's like, is it is it Sir's or is it yours? I've done this bit, and I was like, like gluing in worksheets. Or what? I can't cope with this. So the OneNote just keeps that all together, and I've now then got a reference point that I can go, right, well, do you remember we did ratio, and there's your ratio lesson. They can scroll through it, and I can annotate over it as well if I needed to write over the top of anything. So I know some people are using it as part of their marking, that's where they're doing their marking. I'm tending to try and get students to use it more as a record, like an exercise book, basically.
Elaine, you're using Microsoft Whiteboard, aren't you? Which I assume is an extension or a part of Teams as well, or can be used alongside it. Is that right?
Yeah, so there's two ways of using Whiteboard. There's the native Whiteboard itself that's within Teams. So if you're sharing your screen, on the very right hand side, you'll actually see this whiteboard come up. And you're able to write on that. You can have it where it can be a collaboration space, so students can write on it and you can write on it. But they've recently rolled a feature now that there's a present only mode. So it's only the teacher writing on it. So at the very, back in March when a couple of my teachers got burned a little bit, they said, you know what, I'll use the whiteboard. It sounds great. We'll try it. Then didn't realize that actually students can write all over it as well.
I wonder what drawings they did. I have no idea what they would have drawn.
There's a present only mode, so it's just a teacher now. I tend to use the actual native app, so you can download the app as well. And the real benefits of that, you can put your PowerPoint, your PDFs, your Word all into that app and share it with the students so that you can start annotating and writing over these. I quite like, a lot of my stuff is PDF rather than PowerPoint. I'm not a huge PowerPoint fan, even though I'm a Microsoft fan, not a huge PowerPoint fan for teaching. And I quite like just annotating, and this works really, really well. It's really easy just to click and insert. Same as inserting a picture in PowerPoint. But going back to Naomi's OneNote, the one thing I want to mention about that is the immersive reader, and which is especially beneficial for any students that you have with SEND needs. So there's a feature that Microsoft have rolled. It's immersive reader. It's a game changer in terms of students. I have a year 10 class that I have 2 students who don't have English as a first language. Now, one has broken English, one doesn't have English at all and is learning. And then within this immersive reader, and it's something that I'm going to go into in more detail on my website. It's one of the blog posts that I've planned, because I think in the previous lockdown, we were so concerned about hitting, that 90% of students that we need to get to, that there is sometimes can be a forgotten few, those students who maybe can't read the word, who are dyslexic or have different issues. This immersive reader is a game changer in terms of for them. They're able to take any of the writing that is uploaded into OneNote. It'll change it into text. You can change the size, you can change the font, you can change the color. It'll read it back to you. It'll change the language. Now, the translations, they're pretty good. They're good enough. They're really, really good in terms of being able to access this work. So that's one that I think if people are using OneNote and are using Word, have a look at Immersive Reader and go and play with that if you've any SEND students in your cohort.
Yeah. The other, can I just add to that as well, Tom, if you don't mind as well, just thinking about the sort of the differentiation and so on, is that I've got a split GCSE class with higher and foundation students in it. And one of the challenges is how to deliver that, obviously remotely, how to split the class almost and be teaching to both. And one of the things that I've started using with them is that when you share your PowerPoint, obviously you've got a couple of different ways you can share your screen and share your PowerPoints and so on. If I share my PowerPoint within the Teams meeting rather than sharing my screen, the pupils, I can actually allow them to move forwards and backwards individually. So they can actually move. So I can say to a group of students, right, you're staying with me on this slide. The rest of you, I want you to move on to the next slide and your questions are on that slide.
Oh, what a good idea.
That's really good. That's really good. And then, I have to trust them that they're not going to go too far ahead. But even if they do, it doesn't matter too much. But it means that I can kind of say, right, foundation lot, I want you to stay with me. We're going to go through a bit more on this. Higher, I want you to move on one slide, your questions are there. Or I might say, right, I've got some grade 4, some grade 5, some grade 6, grade 7 questions on the various different slides. You pick which slide it is that you want to do. And that involves you sharing your PowerPoint from OneDrive within the meeting rather than sharing the screen as a brand new screen.
And a reminder, of course, if you do have a lot of pupils who are accessing it on a video, on a mobile, who can't access the PowerPoint, as you said, with regard to the technology, you can, of course, save a PowerPoint as a PDF. So that helps as well. And obviously there's plenty of PowerPoints that people are sharing that have lots of animations during them. So you use that, you lose that functionality, but we're all doing the best we can. Okay, it can't be everything. I want to make sure there's a few websites I think we're going to talk about briefly in a few moments. And just because every time I do this, do these episodes, I do this no textbook required nonsense. I'm not going to sing it today. We haven't got time. But what are your favorite online resources and why? Now, one that I'm going to mention, if I may, just because I'm sharing, so I might as well go first, is clearly MathSpot. And I've already focused on this on a resourceful episode, but immediately in day one yesterday, I wanted counters and I knew I had them straight away. And I was doing prime numbers and factors and multiples. And I was talking about the fact that with 8, I can make a rectangle and I can make another rectangle, can't I? So it can't be a prime number. And I just thought this is the time. And as you said, Naomi, and I'm going to get it wrong again, learning from a crisis. What's the exact expression?
Never waste a good crisis. Can I just make it clear? This was not my phrase. This was Brian Lightman. Otherwise, I don't want to steal his thunder there.
Never waste a good crisis. Now's your opportunity to really learn about representation and really be brave about using representation. And if there's one, there are many good websites, but this one is just phenomenal. So many things just to demonstrate. Access the maths. I love the word access in this, letting the people see the maths. This is a real opportunity to be sharing this. And also, pupils can go on this website and play themselves if they wish. There is no signing, there's no GDPR issues on that one. So that's a website I wanted to suggest. If I could ask, I know that you both had a website suggest, and then we'll just go back to Teams and see if there's anything that you feel we should be sharing that I've missed out, because you know so much more than I do. Naomi, I think you were going to refer to Matt Woodfine's website again. Would you have to share that on screen?
Yep, so I'll share it on the screen. So the reason I've really enjoyed using Matt's website as well, again, it's that whole thing about the noise, reducing the noise. So on this mini whiteboards website, I can then model questions. I can screen grab if I want. I can model it and then they have a go at doing the question. I can get some questions all at 1-star level. So I can instantly get those 1-star questions there. And I'll just click back again. I've got the mini whiteboards, which is obviously the larger questions. Again, put the answer up. I can change the rating. I can make it harder. I can make it easier, depending on my students and so on. Lots and lots of different functionality in there. And fantastically as well, he also has the facility to create a worksheet for you as well. So I can do all of this, and then I can print and I can create a worksheet that matches up with it as well.
And for more details on this episode, go to Resourceful number 14, I think. Now, I would now turn to Elaine, but according to my screen, she has disappeared.
She's having technical issues, aren't we all at the moment?
Well, do you know what? This is just another example of it. And I refuse to edit this out either, unless she doesn't come back, and then it'll have to be what it'll be. But no, we have more details on that resourceful episode, and he does go into it. Now, but he has a whiteboard function as well, which you're allowed to get your class together, aren't you, on there? But I don't think that you have to sign in. I think you have to put a code on it.
I'm not sure. That's a new one on me. I don't know that one.
Do you know what? I'm pretty convinced. Now, admittedly, I did the recording with him a while ago, but let's get it up. I haven't got it up to hand. Oh no, I've got to remember the web address.
HKB.
HBK.
HBK, that's it. Yeah,
HBK, because I can't help but think of the wrestler. Some people know what I'm talking about somewhere. It's on here now. The software. I've got to go back to my own episode. But I am convinced there is a software part of this. I know. Oh, I know. It's called because it's on my mobile phone, and the kids can do it quite nicely. It's called Pencil Box.
On the pencil box. Yeah, there you go.
There is Lord Pencil Box. It's right in front of me. What's wrong with me? So these are all on the phone as well. So do you know what? I need to go back and watch this episode myself. But get started. I'm going to allow Elaine back in. I'm assuming you can see me do this, by the way. Look, you can see her. You can see sharing. Elaine looks like she's just coming back in now, which is fantastic. And I'm sure when you use this, so let's go for get started. Will it allow me to do it on here? No, it won't. I really wanted to. I know you can put a code in and the kids can then access it as well, but I need to go back to that episode. The point of this episode, of course, is to go, what do you want to go and learn more from? There is another episode of Resourceful that looks on this website. Of course, we should be looking at this website because Elaine, who has now returned, hello, Elaine, she's going to continue to add to this about the how-to. stuff. Now I'm going to stop sharing because I know I'm sure there was a website, Elaine, that you were going to share as well. It's something that you're using a lot at the moment and you think would be useful.
Yeah, apologies about that. You know, the joys of doing stuff over the internet suddenly drops out. And I think
your background's gone. Sorry, a bit of a loud reaction unnecessarily.
Right, I will get that back because
no, don't focus on that.
Yeah, so one of the things that I do normally is I normally record the instructional part, the important part of my lesson, so that if something like this happens, that student internet drops out, they can go back and watch the video again afterwards. The website that I wanted to share was Nearpod. So let me share my screen.
Yes, someone tweeted me about this, and I then looked at your Twitter. I think it's how I came across you actually, because I saw you were a Microsoft expert, and you knew this Nearpod. I was like, oh, I got to meet this Elaine. And if there was a real positive from 2020, there's not many. A lot of us have started to meet in this fashion and being able to kind of close the boundaries of geography, which is fantastic. Clearly, this video is being edited because not only has Elaine changed background again, we've had some technical issues and we've all been experiencing those, which is great. But we're handling it and we're getting on with it. Elaine, you're going to be sharing your screen now. So all being well, this will be edited on and you're going to show us Nearpod. Nearpod, is that right?
Yeah, so Nearpod, yeah, it's absolutely free app. There is a paid version if you want to have loads and loads of slides, but it's a nice quick way of getting some feedback. So the one I want to show you is a collaboration board. This is the collaboration board I use with my Year 11 Sports Studies group that I teach. And they're able to answer the question, and basically it's the online version of giving a post-it note to every student and getting them to write something on it and post it. What's quite nice with this is that you can moderate it as well. So if you have students that you know are going to be a little bit silly, you can moderate it and check what's going on before it's put on. And it means then that students can anonymously give that feedback. I know we touched on AFL and strategies for interaction, and this has been a great one because students can just type. They can do it multiple times. This is just literally one aspect of it. You're able to upload this as an entire slideshow and embed it into your slideshow, or you can have it just as a standalone feature. It's the case they go to nearpod.com. There's a little code you can see at the top left hand corner. Type that in and they're in straight away. So there's no messing about with logins or anything like that. You're able to do longer questions. There's some fill in the blanks. There's some matching exercises. So you can be very, very creative. But I've used it just for that very quick feedback from students and to be able to visually see it, so that they're able to look at each other's answers without having the issue of, oh well, my name is attached to my answer in the chat, which I think is a feature for some people. One of the complaints is like, how do I get my students to speak to me? They won't chat. They're so quiet. And this is a good one that they're able to type it. You're able to see the names as a class teacher. With the longer questions, you're able to share those. You're able to flip between hiding and unhiding students' names. For immediately, if you want to have a look, it's actually, I have a thread on it on my Twitter, which I'm going to probably pin that one, and I'll share it as a blog post as well. It's really useful one.
Your Twitter handle was on earlier on in the video, so if anyone rewinds, because I know it's off screen at the moment. I think I noticed on Nearpod, I don't know anything about it, so I'm learning from you. I know I'm looking on the website now. I can see there's a video for 2 minutes how it explains. It says students join a letter, enter a code. So I'm guessing they don't have to put in their details. So for GDPR, is there something similar? Because I know that's Matt's website as well. As much as I'm not sure how the video will edit it eventually as part of this, but the teachers can give a code to the kids, and the kids put in that code, so it's not as if they have to put in any personal details, which is obviously a big concern at the moment. So is that's the case for Nearpod as well?
Yeah, so the case with Nearpod, they put in the code, then they put in their name so that you know who they are, and that's right. That's it. Now the benefit of this is that you can use it as a live collaboration feature. So if you're doing a live lesson, but also if you're doing a pre-recorded video, you could stick the code in, and they can do it at any stage. The same that would apply for more of the longer questions. The collaboration board, which I shared, may, depending on your class, your class, if they're going to be silly with the comments or not, you cut your cloth to suit. you can do it with longer questions, but it's a nice, easy way of getting that feedback, either as a live lesson or as something that it's a pre-record, or it's an activity you want them to do that's not necessarily live.
Elaine, Naomi, I think I think before we started recording, I said, oh, we should only make this about 20-30 minutes. I think we've gone on for about 40-45, admittedly with some edits in the middle where we're going to have technical issues, but it just shows how much fun it is to talk to both of you, how that time has absolutely flown with all the great ideas, and maybe it's something we do revisit in a few weeks' time as well, if you're both happy to, because we've got new ideas by then and how easy it is to use certain websites. I'm hoping anybody who's watching or has watched has at least picked up some tips and some websites they're going to invest a little bit of time into. I'm hoping they're not laborious. I'm hoping they're not things that are going to add loads of time and lots of work onto your onto your workload. So as Elaine said, please look at your department and work together. Think about collaborating. So with those polls, they're not going to be long to create, but if you create it for one, everybody in your school can be using that as well. I think we're in the golden age of maths teaching because so many people share so much stuff, and the fact that you've both been willing to share your time this late in the evening as well is much appreciated. So Elaine and Naomi, thank you very much for being involved in this episode of Resourceful.